Hello and welcome to the very first episode of In My Defense, a fantasy football IDP show. Brought to you by yours truly, Jordan Rains at 50 Shades of Drunk, and powered by the Dynasty Nerds. What's up, YouTube? What's up, Nerd Herd? How you guys doing today? So this is a new show, new format for me, just something different from what you guys may know me from, formerly of the IDP 401 podcast. Been writing for Dynasty Nerds for a while, a little over a year now. And then also I do my own podcast, which is Defense Matters, mostly IDP, all fantasy football, which usually focuses on weekly rankings. But today we'll be doing the very first episode in my defense. This is going to be kind of the flagship YouTube show for IDP Fantasy Football for Dynasty and through the Dynasty Nerds. So I'm really excited to be the host of that and here with you guys today. Before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate that so you guys can get alerted when we put up new stuff on the Nerd Herd channel or the Dynasty Nerds channel, and as well whenever I post a new video. And yeah, so we're going to go ahead and for the first episode of the show today, we are going to kind of do a quarterly review of the season so far for IDP. The season 16 weeks long, with your bye weeks or whatever put in for fantasy purposes, you can really cut it up into 4 chunks, so 4 quarters, the first 4 weeks, second 4 weeks, next 4 weeks, next 4 weeks. So when we were kind of think tanking this project, is kind of what do we want to do to get this started? What do we want to focus on that's going to help people? Since it is dynasty focused, we want to be able to look at things at a macro point of view. So we wanted more than just a weekly data point. So we're not going to do a weekly show in season. So the next show will be at the end of the second quarter, which will be, through the next 4 weeks, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So far we've seen weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so for this episode, we're going to kind of review the leaderboard for the season through, the first 4 weeks at each of the major positions. Defensive line, linebacker, and defensive back is how we do them on the site for rankings. That's how we're going to look at them here today. And we're going to look at that through the lens of IDP 1-2-3 scoring, which is the default scoring system that Dynasty Nerds has chosen to adopt, which we use to kind of see how players are doing through the season, so we can have an actual numerical value by their name each week, and we can talk and speak through that lens for your leagues. And hope most leagues, most well put together IDP leagues, even if they're not a true IDP 1-2-3 default, they're generally pretty close. Some leagues, every league's different and unique though, so you'll need to look at that yourself. But most of them, what we suggest at Dynasty Nerds, what we promote as the default and how we're going to look at those guys and rank them and look at the leaderboard is going to be through IDP 1-2-3 scoring. Then we're going to take a little time and we're going to look at some injuries because it's been a hellacious season for injuries so far. We've lost guys, we've got guys going on IR, and we've got a lot of guys just banged up in general. So we're going to look at some of those players, see how we should be approaching them, what we should be expecting from them the rest of the season. And then we're going to look at some guys who are trending up through the first few weeks, some guys that may be surprises to some of us. Maybe some people saw it coming. Just some guys who are doing well this season, and what we're going to expect from them going forward. Are we going to be acquiring them? Are we looking to sell high? Are we trying to get rid of them, try and get them on our teams? Things like that. And then we'll look at some guys trending down, some players that are not performing as expected, not as advertised, and just all around just not performing the way you would expect these players, especially as some of the names on here are just, it's disappointing so far. So that's what we're going to do on today's show. And like I said, subscribe and leave comments. I want to interact with the audience as the show gets bigger, answer questions on the next show. Hopefully people will be leaving some comments, maybe have some questions I can answer in a segment in the next one. So we're going to go ahead and start. We're going to take me out of screen here, and we are going to put up IDP 1-2-3 scoring. I'm going to go over that with you guys real quick, just so you have a frame of mind into how this leaderboard is going to be. So as you guys may know already, obviously IDP 1-2-3 scoring is the default scoring that Dynasty Nerds has chosen to adopt. That's my baby, my brainchild. If you want to read the full article on it and, some commentary by John Glosser, he and myself put together a really nice piece for Dynasty Nerds on the scoring system, its merits, our thoughts on IDP scoring as in a general sense, what we think the space is going to look like going forward, and just kind of our thoughts on why the scoring system works. One of the reasons it does work, I believe, is because it's very similar to a lot of good IDP scoring systems that are already out there. So a lot of people are kind of familiar with a system similar to this. But essentially, it's 1, 2, 3-point plays, IDP 1-2-3, quarterback hits being 1-point plays, and assisted tackles being 1-point plays. Tackles for loss and solo tackles are 2-point plays. forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, pass deflections, safeties, and blocked kicks. Those are all going to be your 3-point plays. And then you're going to have your touchdown equivalent on the defensive side, which would be an IDP touchdown, 6 points, but also sacks and interceptions are going to be 6-point plays in IDP 1-3 default scoring. Now, a lot of leagues, especially on Sleeper, you can add sack yards, fumble recovery yards, interception return yards, things like that. And we encourage you, to any scoring system in any league is its own unique ecosystem, its own unique enterprise, and you guys can adjust as you need, as you see fit. But IDP 1-2-3 scoring, like I said, has been adopted by Dynasty Nerds, and we're going to look at most of the things on this show through that lens as far as IDP value is concerned. Stats, we're going to look at that here in a minute at the leaderboards. Those will all be IDP 1-2-3 scoring totals, point totals for the season. So this is just our way of, extending an olive branch to the IDP community and just people that don't play IDP saying, look, we're going to make this easier. We're going to make this a little bit more simple. We're going to make this fun. We're going to reward plays that need to be rewarded properly and scaled properly. So the IDP isn't just a boring, tackle heavy or a generic description like a sack heavy league. So, like I said, check that out on dynastynerds.com. Another thing we like to do with that is just like Fantasy Pros and like the Dynasty Nerds IDP rankings, another nod to the 1-2-3 is the 3 positions, which is defensive line and defensive tackles are, grouped in as one position since they do basically the same thing. They rush the passer. That's where most of their points are coming from, is those tackles and those behind the line of scrimmage plays. Linebackers are one position, and then defensive backs are another position. So defensive backs, you have safeties and cornerbacks, and they'll be merged together in IDP 1-2-3 scoring, in a general sense. That's what we like to do anyway. Obviously, if you're in a 5 or true position league, those are awesome too. I'm in a lot of those myself. But it's not for everybody. I will say that, and a lot, just as a way for people to easily assimilate into the IDP community. This is what we have put together, and this is what we're going to look at on Dynasty Nerds, for the foreseeable future. So, without holding off too long, let's go ahead and jump into the leaderboards in IDP 1-2-3 scoring at the defensive line position. Now, bear in mind there'll be a few guys on this list that may not be defensive line eligible in your leagues, depending on where you play. A lot of these are kind of catered to the Sleeper app, which is where I play a lot of my fantasy. A lot of people play Dynasty, and Sleeper app is getting bigger. If you guys are not on Sleeper app, check it out. Dynasty Nerds has a really good and active IDP Sleeper channel. So there we do AMAs every start sit, office hours every Sunday. I've been on there the last few Sundays. Our editor Dennis has been on there, some other folks. So we put a lot of work into that channel, and we're kind of preparing for the future when Sleeper is the primary platform. So, but anyway, to go ahead and start the leaders right now through 4 weeks at defensive line: Zadaria Smith 85 points, Myles Garrett 76 points, Aldon Smith 76 points, Shaq Barrett 72 points, T.J. Watt with 70 points, Akeem Hicks 70 points, Aaron Donald 62 points, Grady Jarrett 61. Joey Bosa, 58, Carrie Hyder at 56, Shelby Harris, 55, DeForest Buckner, 55, Trey Hendrickson with 54, and Carl Lawson with 54 points. Those are kind of the current leaderboards right now for defensive linemen. Zadaria Smith was not really very high up here until he had a very big game in week 4. He ended up with 6 solo tackles, 3 sacks, I think 3 or 4 tackles for a loss. He had a very big game. It was the biggest IDP game of the season for any player at any position. Came through with a smooth 45 points. So that really boosted his score and made him the leader of this leaderboard after 4 weeks. I know some people were a little not really wanting, slow start, I guess. He had a sack to start the season. I think he might actually had 2 sacks before this, but the games weren't very big. The auxiliary stats, the impact plays weren't there. Not a lot of tackles for loss, only 1 sack games, but blew up in week 4 against Matt Ryan and the Atlanta Falcons for a 4-sack game or 3-sack game, which, like I said, boosted him to the top by a 9-point margin over the guys in second place, which are Myles Garrett and Aldon Smith. Myles Garrett, we all know who and what Myles Garrett is. I believe he's either consensus 1, 2, or 3 on Dynasty Nerds right now. He probably should be 1 because I know Danielle Hunter, with the news about his herniated disc in his neck, he's probably going to take a little bit of a slide. Myles Garrett, 2 weeks in a row with a strip sack, forced fumble. He's in contention to finish the season out as sack leader and as the IDP scoreboard leader. Would not be shocked at all if that was the case, quite honestly, based on the level of play that he's been playing at. Aldon Smith, this is a little bit of a surprise to many people, myself included. He hasn't been in the league in 5 years. Last time we saw him in the league, I believe he only had 4 or 5 sacks that season. He already has 4 this year. He's leading all defensive linemen in the NFL in snaps played. I believe right behind Chandler Jones. So he's up there as far as being on the field, and he's producing. I think he has the second or third most tackles at the position defensive line throughout the first 4 weeks of the season. Like I said, he has the second most sacks with 4. Zadarius and Myles Garrett both have 5, I believe. So at 76 points, he's a guy that a lot of people didn't see coming. I picked him up on some waivers in my redrafts, and I know he was out on a lot of IDP waivers over the summer. I had a few people ask about him, and I kind of hand waved him, and that was a mistake on my part. So if were wiser than I and able to pick him up, you're right now sitting with a top 3 defensive lineman in a season where we've had some guys not come through. Chandler Jones, Cameron Jordan not coming through in the big ways you'd hope that they would. Another guy that we lost, Nick Bosa, Max Crosby, Josh Allen, not really producing massively. So in a world where those guys were last year pretty much staples at your defensive line, 1 or 2, to get a guy like Aldon Smith basically completely free, he's going to help you win your leagues this season. So good on you if you manage to snag him. Shaq Barrett, maybe, and TJ Watt, these 2 guys may be linebacker eligible only in your league, but with the move by Sleeper, to make them DL eligible and the edge position in ESPN this summer, it's going to become more and more of a trend that these guys are played appropriately in IDP lineups. And that's not a knock or any true position people out there. If that's how you want to play, that's fine. Most of us like to play in a more intuitive, user-friendly, fun manner. And that means Shaq Barrett, TJ Watt are D-line eligible. So these 2 guys, and they should be. Look at the points they're putting up, 72 and 70 points. It's worth noting TJ Watt is in the top 5. He's only played 3 weeks. The other guys on this list have played 4 weeks. So TJ Watt, he's not even a dark horse for me. He's my pick to kind of defensive player of the year, sack leader, just all that in a bag of chips. He's so good. And I'm glad that he got the DL eligibility on Sleeper now. Shaq Barrett, same scenario. A lot of people were not really on Shaq Barrett coming into the season. People, they need to see it again. Well, all the offseason, I was like, if you got to see it again, you're going to watch it happen right before your eyes and you're not going to get a piece of it. How many back-to-back great seasons do you guys have and they're healthy? You got to buy in or you got to just watch it happen before your eyes on someone else's team. I personally bought in a lot of places and it feels really good. I know even the places I was not able to get him in my drafts or acquire him, I'm still been looking to do it. But these last 2 weeks, he's been very good. The first 2 weeks of the season, he only put up, I believe, 8 and 9 points each of those weeks. But he's had some big games since then, enough to put him up at 72 points. So going forward, he's a guy you definitely want to own. Anybody or any person who's knocking Shaq Barrett as a not elite option just is not paying attention, unfortunately, because that's just the way of the world right now. Akeem Hicks, this is a bit of a surprise. We have a couple of big boys here. Akeem Hicks, Aaron Donald, Grady Jarrett. These are all guys that a lot of people consider interior linemen, proving that they can hang with some of these bigger, more splashy edge play guys. Akeem Hicks, like I said, a bit of a surprise. He's the most productive guy on the Chicago defensive line. Khalil Mack is doing his usual just enough to skate by, at least for IDP purposes. Aaron Donald, he had a bad week 2. I think he had 2 points, but came roaring back week 3, had like a 38, 39, 36, 37 point game. He still finished second that week to Aldon Smith, but a really nice game brought him back up. And that's the nature of this position. You're going to have up weeks and down weeks. And to get a consistent player, it's pretty rare to get a TJ Watt kind of guy who was very consistent last year. That they're hard to get at this position. That's why we really do bemoan the loss of Danielle Hunter, who was a crazy high tackle floor and a crazy high sack floor. And that was what made him the number 1 at this position coming into the season. And like I said, it's a real loss to a lot of teams that he's not out there putting points up for you. Grady Jarrett, coming in right behind Aaron Donald, 61 points. He did leave week 3 a little banged up with a hip injury, but he played well. He was back to his usual role on week 4. playing a lot of snaps. He's the guy to own on that defensive line right now in Atlanta. Dante Fowler has been a little bit of a disappointment, which we'll get to him a bit later. Joey Bosa, he's doing par for the course so far this year. He is, obviously he's up here with the top 15 guys. No big monster games yet, no 2-3 sack games, no forced fumbles, crazy things like that, but he's doing what he should be doing, and he's pacing at a proper pace, and the big games will come. The week winners will come for Joey Bosa. Not say he had a really good game, I believe week 1, but he's been floating around that 16, 17, 18 area, nothing really explosive, no 30-point games, no 35-point games yet, but like I said, they will come for Joey Bosa eventually. Just keep holding on. And he's that other guy that was an elite defensive lineman and is, I believe, in our top 3, or should be in our top 3 consensus on Dynasty Nerds, and for good reason. So he has been bothered a little bit by an elbow injury, but again, as long as he's on the field, you should be playing him weekly as a top option. Carrie Hyder, filling in for Joey's brother Nick, seems to be having some success. I mean, he's 56 points right behind him. With Carrie Hyder at 56, it really makes you wonder what we would have gotten with 16 games of Nick Bosa. Obviously, he's a better talent than Carrie Hyder, would have been in that position, but I guess we'll just never know this year. In the meantime, Carrie Hyder should not be on your waiver wire. If he is, you need to pick him up, even if it's just for the rest of the season that he's relevant. He's very relevant right now. Through the first 4 weeks, I mean, he's a top 15 play. Again, kind of like Joey, no big splash game so far, but he has been fairly consistent. A couple of tackles for loss here and there, a couple of sacks, putting up some okay tackle numbers. So if you lost Nick Bosa and you were able to go get Hyder, or if you have lost Nick Bosa and have not made that move to go get him, he's producing very well. His managers may not realize it because it's just been consistently okay. It hasn't been splashy like Aldon Smith or Myles Garrett. You might still be able to get him, and he's going to be a boon for your team the rest of the way. So definitely want to look at a guy like Carrie Hyder. He should be getting a bump in the consensus rankings on Dynasty Nerds sooner than later. Shelby Harris, I'm not, he's a big guy in Denver and not really overly. Someone tried to trade me Shelby Harris, and he's a guy that I'm not thinking is going to keep this kind of production up. Yeah, he's had a hot start to the season, but we've seen him not necessarily be a hot kind of guy. Everyone else on this list I've pretty much mentioned has at least come through in some way, shape, or form on a somewhat consistent level. Right behind him, though, same number of points, DeForest Buckner. I am on DeForest Buckner. He deserves to be here. He's consistently one of the best interior defensive linemen in the leagues. I mean, he's top 3. I mean, Grady Jarrett, Aaron Donald, and Cam Hayward are really probably the best interior defensive lineman in the league, in my opinion. They're the defensive tackles that I want. Chris Jones as well. Those are the guys that you're looking for in D-tackle specific leagues, but in defensive line leagues, I mean, they're performing well. Shelby Harris, Akeem Hicks, Donald, and Chris Jones, who I believe Chris Jones has 53 points. He's not on this list. He did sit out on Monday night, so if he played, he probably would have been higher up on this list. But because he's lost a week, he's not in this official leaderboard I'm going over with you guys right now. Trey Hendrickson has been a bit of a surprise. I don't know that many people saw this coming. Marcus Davenport and Cam Jordan have been the guys getting the starts for the Saints the last couple of years when they've been healthy, but with, Marcus Davenport really struggling to stay healthy and be healthy, Trey Hendrickson has kind of emerged, and he's put himself in this, in the runnings to start the season and for a hot start. I came up against him a week ago in a matchup, kind of unassumed, kind of thought, somebody's desperate, but no, somebody was sharp, somebody was smart. They're playing, a guy against me that I need to be a little bit more aware of. So you guys should probably see him coming up in the Dynasty Nerds rankings as well in the near future. But Trey Hendrickson is a guy you definitely need to be watching. And, if he's still available in your leagues on your waivers, he's a guy you're going to want to definitely consider picking up and playing. And then Carl Lawson, not playing the most snaps on the Bengals defensive line. That would go to Sam Hubbard and Dunlap, but he's producing. He's getting behind the line of scrimmage. He showed himself to be a pretty good pass rusher 2 years ago, or last year, I believe he had 22 quarterback hits, even though he didn't produce a lot, nothing on the field a lot. He's a good pass rusher. So maybe he's going to work his way onto the field a little bit more on a Bengals defense or team that's a little bit trying to find its identity still. So it's interesting to see him on this list higher above Sam Hubbard and Carlos Dunlap, both of who, are playing more snaps and have been better options going in the past for IDP. But maybe Carl Lawson is throwing his hat in the ring for this season as well. So that is the leaderboard for the defensive line through the first 4 weeks of the season. Let's transition to the linebackers. Through the first 4 weeks, Blake Martinez is your number one guy with 93 points. Levante David, 89. Eric Kendricks, 85. Zach Cunningham, 83. Miles Jack, 82. John Bostic coming in with 80 points. Patrick Queen coming in at 76. Bobby Wagner, 76. Roquan Smith, 74. Devin White, 72. Josie Jewell, 72. Demario Davis, 71. Fred Warner, 68. And Jalen Smith at 66. So, Blake Martinez, let's talk about him real quick. He's a guy that you should have had highly ranked coming into the season in Dynasty, even with the move. His last 3 seasons, total tackles have been like 155, 144, 144. I mean, he hits the threshold for an elite linebacker more often than not. He's just a great all-around tackler. He's almost never gets hurt. And he does have a little an interesting thing about him coming into the season. You know, you forget is he has a little bit of blitzing upside. He can get home when his number's called to do so. Through the first 3 weeks of the season, 4 weeks of the season, he and Demario Davis, who's another linebacker who can get home, both have 2 sacks. So through the first 4 weeks, they've got 2 sacks. I mean, they're not sack leaders, but I mean, they have more sacks than a lot of guys. And they're also racking up, big tackle numbers. I mean, he's got almost 50. I think he's got over 50 right now. Blake Martinez does. So Levante David. I mean, I love Levante David. Coming into the season, I was, trying to tell people, be aware, Levante David he's going to have a good season this year. Devin White had a lot of shine on him, but what do we know about Levante David? We know he lives behind the line of scrimmage. We know that he's an impact player on the field, especially in the forced fumble category. He's always forcing fumbles. He's just a dynamic playmaker. And here we are, 4 weeks into the season, and he's the number 2 linebacker. Sometimes you just got to go with the consistent, reliable guys. And Blake Martinez and Levante David have definitely been the embodiment of that throughout their careers. Levante David especially. And Blake Martinez is becoming he's basically one of the most reliable linebackers in the league right now for IDP. Eric Kendricks comes a little bit of surprise, but that's, he's pretty much the only guy out there right now doing anything for the Minnesota Vikings. Harrison Smith had a big week 2, but then he got ejected, or week 3, and then he got ejected week 4. So he's kind of hurt your team more than helped it so far this season. But Eric Kendricks, a guy you could draft late, usually like linebacker, 18 to 30, and he's putting up big numbers to start the season. He's not a sexy name in the linebacker world, so you can probably still go get him right now, nerds, for a fairly reasonable price, and I don't see him slowing down anytime soon. Zach Cunningham not playing 100% of snaps. You might hear that he is. I actually listened to the Around the NFL podcast the other day, and they said offhandedly, Zach Cunningham, and Bernard Kinney playing 100% of snaps. Zach Cunningham doesn't play 100% of snaps. He plays like 80-something% of snaps, and he still produces. This guy is a tackle freak. Led the AFC last year in tackles. Could very easily do it again this year. Miles Jack, this little bit of a surprise. Not a guy that anybody coming into the season was really lights out excited for. Another, he could drafting him as a linebacker, late linebacker 2, linebacker 3, and been playing with his hair on fire this year. Now he's not playing in the middle anymore. Joe Schobert's kind of taking over that role. He's just able to accumulate tackles. Last week he had an interception in the end zone, but he did injure his ankle on that play. I'm not really sure, what the update status is as of right now, but hopefully he doesn't miss much time if he misses any at all. He hasn't been put on IR as of this moment of this recording, so at least we have that to be thankful for. Eric Kendricks actually has 45 tackles through the season, and then Blake Martinez is 43, Zach Cunningham 43. So 3 of the top 4 guys right there all are leading the league in tackles. And then Levante David, although he doesn't have 35 tackles, he does have a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, and a couple other, kind of bigger plays that kind of help boost his numbers. John Bostic, this is another kind of surprise. We weren't really sure what to expect this season from Washington linebackers, but here we are again. That's John Bostic. Guy's got 37 tackles, 2 sacks through the start of the season, 80 points. Patrick Queen, this is a surprise to me. Honestly, I didn't see this coming necessarily with the lack of real college production from Patrick Queen, but he's been playing really well for the Baltimore Ravens. He's had a couple of big impact plays. He's had a sack, a forced fumble on the season. He had 3 tackles for a loss this last week, which, really helped. He and Roquan both had 3 tackles for a loss this last week, which really kind of jumped them up a little bit in the rankings. But they got him, not holding it against them. But so you like to see that he's getting behind the line of scrimmage consistently, it seems, and he's supposed to be a good coverage linebacker. He's not playing 100% of snaps either right now. I would liken him to Devin Bush last season, where Devin Bush was playing, never really got up to 100% of snaps, but he still produced. And into the season, I think it was top 25, 26 linebacker. So Patrick Queen is on pace to do that. So we'll see if he can keep it up. If he does, and you drafted him early, you've been rewarded. So that's awesome. Bobby Wagner right there with him, 76 points. We know what Bobby Wagner is. Unless he gets hurt at the end of the season, he's going to be a top 8 linebacker. He does it all, and he doesn't look like he's lost a step. Roquan Smith started out the season not slow, but just kind of nothing flashy, nothing exciting about it. But this last week, like I said, he had 3 tackles for loss. I think he had like 10 solos, so he really boosted his score this last week. Kind of took over that game on defense. As one of, showed himself again to be that kind of true leader. So I like that about him. He can come out and be a true dominant force at that linebacker position and take over a game. We've seen him do it before. I just wish he'd do it a little more often, a little bit more consistently, but we'll see what goes on with that. Devin White, another Tampa Bay player here. Like we said, we talked about Shaq Barrett earlier. Levante David's high on this list, and then Devin White. All 3 of these guys are, primo players right now. Devin White he's a big play, kind of waiting to happen. So I was a little bit cool on him coming into the season, not because I didn't believe he could do it, but I thought maybe the big plays would slow down, but they're not. I mean, he's a walking big play, and he's on a defense full of walking big plays. So good on him. He had a down week this week and last week, actually, and still able to hold his own up here as a top 12 guy. So I actually sent out a trade for him just the other day. Maybe an owner's just a little, I don't know, emotional or reactionary, thing. Oh, well, maybe it wasn't meant to last, wasn't meant to be. So if you can acquire him right now, try and do it. But more likely than not, you're not going to be able to get him from his owners right now. Josie Jewell, Demario Davis. Josie Jewell also has 2 sacks along with Demario Davis and Blake Martinez. Those both came on Thursday night against the Jets last week, where Josie Jewell is actually the number 1 scorer in IDP Fantasy Football at the linebacker position. Ended up with 32 points, 3 solos, 2 assists, 2 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 5 quarterback hits for Josie Jewell. So they were using him aggressively. So he's a guy, he might be on some of your waiver wires out there still, just because he's not a sexy name. If you have some bigger names and you've had to make cuts in the offseason, he could be floating out there. So go look for him. And he's, again, not a sexy name. So he might be a guy you can go acquire right now. I wouldn't overpay for Josie Jewell necessarily, because it has taken a lot for him to get on the field, but he's on the field now. So if you're trying to win in 2020, Josie Jewell is a cheap option that right now is sitting in the top, 10, 12 at linebacker in pretty much all scoring systems. And he's going to be a lot easier to get than Devin White, Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, Zach Cunningham, Levante David, Blake Martinez, guys like that. So Demario Davis, we know what he is. He's a total beast. I love him. Getting a little older, but he's definitely not a dynasty sell by any means. He's going to get you through 2020 with a lot of points. Fred Warner, I'm not the biggest Fred Warner guy. I like Fred Warner. I think he's a great linebacker, but for IDP purposes, I'm a little less big on guys that are, really good at coverage and all that. I know people love that because they play 100% of snaps, but their assignments are just a little different, and it doesn't allow them to just make a play on the ball necessarily, like a guy who just, his job is to be that solid middle linebacker that just, plugs up the hole. So I'm going, in Dynasty, he's still a top 15 guy. Right now, he's a top 15 guy in the scoring on the season. So don't want to knock him too much, but just kind of, put a little of my personal opinion in there. Jalen Smith, love Jalen Smith. Unfortunately, he is not playing well this season, and I really don't like that. Still finishing as a high scorer, still putting up consistently, week in and week out. He's an every week play. But I really just wish those Cowboys could get their defense sorted out. It's been out of sorts. Not saying it's his fault or anything, but I've seen him miss some tackles that led to some big plays. So I don't know what's up with Jalen Smith. I don't know what's up with the whole juju of that team, but hopefully they can get it sorted out sooner than later. So those are your leaderboards right now for a defensive line and for linebacker. We're gonna go ahead and hop into the defensive backs really quick here. go over those leaderboards. Again, it's defensive backs, so there will be safeties, there will be cornerbacks in here. So we'll talk about them. Mike Hilton right now, number 1 at 84 points. Marcus May, 76. Marlon Humphrey, 74. Brian Poole, 72. Pierre Desir, 72. Jordan Poyer, 71. Shaq Griffin, 69. Jordan Whitehead, 68. Antoine Winfield Jr., 68. Malcolm Jenkins, 68. Justin Simmons, 68. James Bradbury, 67. John Johnson, 67. And then Tracy Walker. So in this group, you have some of the usual suspects, Jordan Poyer, John Johnson, Tracy Walker, all, starting strong safeties, all guys that we knew would, coming into the season and you knew were going to produce for you, are, ranked in the top 15 at their position in defensive back in Dynasty, pretty much anywhere you look. So those are some of the usual suspects. Mike Hilton, been good for the Steelers for a while, playing with lights out right now. I don't know if he's just getting picked on or targeted a lot, but he's putting up the kind of numbers that Logan Ryan was putting up last year. At the cornerback position, just getting a lot of tackles, making a lot of impact plays, a lot of plays on the ball. He's doing it every week. It's not like he's just had a couple of pop games like some of these guys on this list. I mean, he's been a high scorer every single week. So he's not on your waiver wire right now, probably. If he is, go get him. If somebody's trying to get rid of him, I'm seriously considering buying, because the Steelers are going to be they're going to be in games where people throw a lot. And Mike Hilton's only, 25, 26. I mean, the points are going to be there for Mike Hilton. I think they're just going to keep pouring on the rest of the season. So get on the bus. Marcus May, been playing consistent. Really, a lot of these points came on the back of his 44-point week in week 1. He hasn't even put up 44 points since then, but still, he's a starting strong safety on a team that's going to, the Jets, a lot of time on the field. So he could have some more big games coming his way. We know Greg Williams is going to use him to try to attack people. So Marlon Humphrey, a guy that I had ranked pretty high coming into the season in my defensive back grouping. Consistently last season was a playmaker, getting a lot of tackles. He's not scared to get down there and get dirty. And he's giving his owners exactly what you wanted. He's playing in a good division for some turnovers too, playing Baker, playing the rookie Joe Burrow, and then playing my dude Big Ben. So Marlon Humphrey is on top of the fact that just he's as a playmaker, he's playing in a little bit of a division where, people like to turn the ball over a little bit. So he's going to get a few games where the probability of impact plays is going to be higher. So Brian Poole coming in at number 4. Another cornerback, Pierre Desir, another cornerback. These guys are really up here, off the back of interceptions. Shaq Griffin as well, another interception guy right now. But Brian Poole, if you're in cornerback leagues, these are guys you want. I mean, I'm actually in a dynasty league where I have Brian Poole and Shaq Griffin, where I drafted them last year, and they were okay last year. But I mean, right now they're playing with their hair on fire, and it's cornerback specific. So I'm really excited about that. But if they're out there, they're definitely, you could play them every week as defensive back 2s. I wouldn't play them too confidently as defensive back 2s. Well, 2 3s. I would be confident, playing pretty much anybody on this list. Jordan Poyer, obviously, he's in every week locked in 1. Antoine Winfield, the rookie, doing really well, guys. The best rookie defensive back so far through the season, even better than Jeremy Chin. Kyle Duggar's taking a little while to get acclimated, it feels like. Winfield he's being used properly by Todd Bowles. He's rushing the passer. He's making big plays. He's had interceptions. He's at least one interception. He almost had a couple more, I know. Malcolm Jenkins, tried and true guy, back with the Saints. 68 points so far through the season. He's pretty much a lock to finish in the top 20. Justin Simmons, another guy that's pretty much a lock to finish in the top 20. Free safety for the Broncos, or strong safety, free safety. Bradbury playing pretty good this season for the Panthers. I've been reading some stuff that's saying his play is just, PFF seems to like him. He's kind of stepped up for them. The Panthers team's actually looking, and their defense is a little saucier than I think a lot of people expected starting out the year. It's interesting to me that, Christian McCaffrey's been out 2 games now, and they've won the 2 games he's been out. So you kind of have to wonder, sometimes these teams, they funnel. I wonder, just aside here for offense, do teams funnel too much to they're superstar players like a Christian McCaffrey. Does it hurt the team? Yeah, for fantasy, it's great for us, but look at Arizona Cardinals right now. All they can do if they're not running Kyler is throw to DeAndre Hopkins, and they're losing. Look at the Panthers. All they've done is feed the ball to Christian McCaffrey the past 2 years, and all they've done is lose. So it's an interesting question about, is there too much superstar power maybe, or is there too much of a, I don't want to say fetish, but too much of a infatuation with your main guy. It's a team sport after all. So maybe that's something to look at for, somebody out there smarter than me can look at. John Johnson, Tracy Walker, John Johnson coming back from the shoulder surgery or season-ending shoulder injury last year, right back where he is. He's a top defensive back option, top safety. And then Tracy Walker started off the season a little bit hot and cold. Matt Patricia did not play him for 100% of snaps the first 2 weeks of the season, and he paid for it. They got beat up on the ground bad. Put him back in. Tracy Walker apparently is not great in coverage, but he is a tackling mountain beast, and he's basically their best defensive player right now. So he is back out there, and he's back up on the leaderboard at 66. So I expect next quarter, the guys I expect to be here next quarter, Winfield, John Johnson, Tracy Walker, Poyer, all to still be here. Hilton will probably still be here. Marlon Humphreys will probably still be here. I wouldn't be surprised if a few of these other guys slipped a little bit and we had some new contenders come in next quarter, but that's something that we will look at when the time comes. So again, real quick, we're, about halfway through the show. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it. Go sub to the Nerd Herd. Guys, use the Dynasty GM tool. It is dope. It syncs up with Sleeper. It syncs up with MFL. It syncs up with Flea Flicker. You can look at all your teams in your league. You can, analyze trades, do a lot of stuff, and we're doing all kinds of improvements for that. So that's only going to get better. It's super affordable, cost efficient, especially if you're playing in money leagues for Dynasty. Like all these little tips and tricks and little things like that, they definitely help. If you don't use them consistently to know what your opponent's using or know that this is out there, it's just one more little tool for your tool belt. So make sure you do that, and then also make sure subscribe to the channel. Interact, leave some comments. What are you guys' thoughts so far on the leaderboard? Who do you think are going to be the leaderboard? Who's going to be a surprise on the leaderboard for the next quarter? That'll be coming out in week 9. We'll be doing the next episode. But give me your thoughts on that. I would be very interested, and we'll, kind of review that. And any questions, again, like I said earlier, leave those as well, and I'll try to get to those on the next show. So we're going to move into the next segment, which is going to be injuries. Hopefully, this will probably be long and short. We have quite a few, but I'm not going to linger too long on them. So right now, guys that are banged up, Jamal Adams, he did not play in week 4. He missed with that injury that he sustained in week 3. When he had that injury in week 3, he did leave the game and did not come back. So he did not score a lot of points for you week 3. He didn't score anything for you week 4. Hoping he comes back in week 5, but honestly, I don't know. I would rather him come back completely healthy than this be a nagging thing. The team's winning right now, so I don't think they have any real need to rush him back. So you may be without him in week 5, maybe even week 6, but he has not been put on IR, so that's good. Chase Young, groin injury. He had a hip or a groin injury in camp, which was a little bit of a concern, and here we are. He injured his groin in week 3, left in the second quarter. He said it was nothing serious. He has not been put on IR, so that's good. He did miss week 4. I don't know if he's trending to play week 5 or not. I'm anticipating being without him in week 5. I have been telling people on my Defense Matters podcast, with him out, Ryan Kerrigan would be a good play. Ryan Kerrigan has been crap. He put up a 0 last week. He didn't put up hardly anything the week before that. So I'm sorry if you listen to that show and you guys got the brunt of that. I did as well. So I'm not, Montez Sweat is the guy there right now that you're really going to play. Him, Jonathan Allen, and Deron Payne are the guys that are healthy on that defensive line. Coming into the season, there's a lot of guys on that line that were healthy and look good, and we've already kind of, lost 2 of them. If you'll look over on the season over Matt Ioannidis, bicep tendon tear. He is out for the season. So there's 2 guys on that line that were going to be good and had started the season out very well, that we have lost one for the season, and we have lost Chase Young for a little while at least. Darius Leonard left week 4 very early in the game. He had 1 solo tackle. He had a groin injury, and he did not come back in. That's not good. groin injury, again, there's a lot of those for whatever reason. Not something you want for your players. Didn't come back in. That's not what you want either. I don't know how long it's going to last. As far as the recording time of this being recorded, he's not been put on IR though. So hopefully he can come back in the next week or 2 or 3. Next on the list, we have Jabril Pepper. Peppers has an ankle injury. He left week 3 as well, left in the first quarter, did not return. They were a little worried that he might have to have surgery and be out for a while, but they looked, they did all the MRI and all that, and apparently it wasn't as bad as they thought. There was a chance he could have played this last week in week 4, but he sat out, which I'm very happy about. I don't know if he's going to be available week 5, but they have not put him on IR, so he could be available week 5. If not, probably week 6 is what I would kind of guess for him to be back. Matt Milano, this one sucks. Matt Milano went out with a hamstring injury at the end in week 4. He had a really nice game in week 3, but unfortunately, like I said, the hamstring injury has happened. They said he's going to be out for a while. I don't know how. I'm assuming that means multiple weeks. He has not been put on the IR, but they said it does not look good from everything that I read. So expect to be without Matt Milano for a little while. In his absence, there is a linebacker there. What's his name? I can't think of it off the top of my head. Listen to the Defense Matters podcast. I'll talk about, waiver ads and stuff like that for your more weekly analysis. So you guys can look for that on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever, and you should be able to find that, and I'll have his name and all that information. Sorry, I don't have it right now for you. But Matt Milano is going to be out for a little while. Miles Jack, I brought him up earlier, one of the leaders on the season right now at the linebacker position. He did hurt his ankle on that interception. They said it looked bad. He still is not on IR either, so I'm looking at that as a net positive at the moment, but that could change. But I'm expecting him to not play this week as well. I'm expecting most of these guys on the banged up to not play week 5. Except maybe Chris Jones. Chris Jones, bottom of the list here. He sat out week 4. He practiced in limited fashion the last 2 days of the week last week. He was a game time kind of decision, like questionable. Like they were like trying to decide if they were going to play him or not. They ended up resting him. They still won the game handily. So I think there's a chance Chris Jones could be back in week 5 for us. So of all the guys I just mentioned, he's the one I'm most confident that we will see coming in this next week. Yeah, a little bit of breaking news, not really breaking news. Damon Harrison has been signed to the Seattle Seahawks practice squad. So for anyone who still has reminiscing about the mini tackle seasons he had, just a year or 2 ago, he is now with the Seahawks. Maybe he'll get on the field sooner than later. We'll have to see. I'm seeing another piece of news here, actually. Demonte Casey, torn Achilles. So for the Falcons, defensive back, he's been filling in fairly well for Keanu Neal, who's oft injured, who's actually out this last week, who is not on the banged up segment right here on the screen, but he was out this last week as well with a hamstring injury. KZ was filling in for him. KZ has now torn his Achilles. So Atlanta's defense is just getting worse and worse. I mean, they're just losing guys left and right. Keanu Neal's barely been held together this season. He sat out the other night. Now we've just lost KZ for the rest of the season. So that's not good. It's really unfortunate, actually, but, what are you going to do? So moving on, we got some guys on IR, or some guys coming off of IR. Christian Kirksey had a shoulder injury in week 3. He went on to the IR, so he will be out at least 3 weeks, guys. So I don't know how bad that shoulder injury was. I mean, I guess it was bad enough for him to miss some serious time. They went ahead and made that executive decision. So he has been put on the IR. Ty Summers is a guy a lot of people are, he's kind of the guy that's going to be taking over that role, or at least he did this last week in week 4. So Kirksey was having a great season to start the year. It's unfortunate, but like I said, he's now on IR. We have to adjust. Leighton Vander Esch broke his collarbone week 1. A lot of people, everyone knows that. He could be due to come off of the IR. This is, an IR transaction. Coming off, he could come off between weeks in late November, essentially what they said, mid to late November. So it's a 6 to 8 week injury. We're 4 weeks in. So I don't know if they're going to bring him back or not. Their season might already be a wash. They can't seem to get a win, even though they have a high-powered offense. But it might be another season where Leighton Vander Esch just sits. Speaking of just sitting, Danielle Hunter, this is tough, but Danielle Hunter has what they're calling a herniated disc in his neck. And it's being suggested, reported, advised to him and by people in his camp to sit out the season. He's trying to get a second opinion. He doesn't want to miss the year, but herniated disc in your neck, it's not looking good for Danielle Hunter. This hurts his dynasty stock, honestly. I mean, we're in the 2020 season. I mean, we're minus 14, minus 12 games of Danielle Hunter. We already know that. So over the course of a career, I mean, he's not going to help you this year. And what do we see with guys with neck injuries? I mean, we just talked about Leighton Vander Esch. Yeah, his neck's not hurt, but his collarbone's hurt. I mean, what does it change? What does it affect? We don't, injuries, the nature of every injury is different. The psychological effect of every injury is different. So Danielle Hunter he is on the IR. He wants to come off, but they're talking about shutting him down for the rest of the season. So if you're a Danielle Hunter manager, I really am sorry, guys. That's a bummer. Here's a guy who's basically lived his entire career on the IR, D Ford, on the IR again, knee injury. The 49ers put him there or a back injury. 49ers placed him on the IR in week 3. So that's why Carrie Hyder has been, playing a lot more, being successful, along with, D Ford being on the IR and Nick Bosa going out with the ACL in week 1. Melvin Ingram also has been placed on the IR. He has a knee injury. They're talking like he is going to come back as soon as he's able to after the 3-week period, which I believe would mean he could come back in week 6. I'm looking at my notes right now. I don't know that I actually have what week he was initially put on the IR. I think it was after week 2, so he could be able to come back in week 5 or 6. So they're talking like he's trending in the right direction to come back for your team. So that's good. He's a plug and play, low end DL2 pretty much weekly, and he's got some upside to him. And then players we lost for the season: Nick Bosa, ACL tear. Really sucks. Like I said, Carrie Hyder right now is in the DL leaderboard. And it just makes you wonder where Nick Bosa would be on that leaderboard if he had 4 games under his belt right now. He'd probably be pretty high. Matt Ioannidis, another guy that has been solid for your teams last year, was looking solid this year. Snaps weren't as high as they were in previous years, but he still was, getting home and getting points for you. Bicep tendon tear, done for the season. Jarrell Casey, longtime Titan and new found home in Denver with the Broncos, tore his bicep tendon as well. That was a major bummer for him. That was in week 3. He's done for the season. And Anthony Barr, maybe part of the reason that Kendricks is playing lights out is Anthony Barr went out with a pectoral tear, and that was week 2. So we lost Anthony Barr to a pec tear in week 2. Solomon Thomas as well, another defensive lineman for the San Francisco 49ers. He went out in week 2 as well with an ACL tear. So that was week 2 for Nick Bosa and for Solomon Thomas. They went out with ACL tear. So that is all the guys. There's the main injuries. There has been a few other guys banged up. Marshawn Lattimore has been banged up. Tremaine Edmonds did hurt his shoulder earlier in the season, played tentatively in week 3, but came back with a pretty decent game in week 4. Who else? Harold Landry did leave the game 2 weeks ago with a little banged up, shaken up. But I haven't seen anything about that injury, so I'm assuming he's okay. Grady Jarrett did leave a game 2 weeks ago with a hip injury, but he just played on Monday Night Football, and he played the pretty much the whole game, so he seems to be okay. Budda Baker had thumb surgery this last week or the week before last, after the week 3 games, before week 4. He sat out week 4, but they're talking like he could be back in week 5, this upcoming week. So monitor that. He may be out for that, but he may be back in. We don't know yet. And then who else we got here? Oh, Jordan Brooks, he came in. We were expecting big things from him week 3. And, he came in. He was going to play that because Bruce Irvin was out, and then he got hurt right as the game started. So he's been out for a little while as well. So it's unfortunate, but we'll have to see if Jordan Brooks can come back this season or not for the Seattle Seahawks. So let's go to the trending up, trending down. We'll talk about those guys. Then we will wrap up the show. So trending up through the first quarter of the season, Aldon Smith, like I said, he's one of the leaders on the leaderboard. He is like number 2, I believe. Huge season, 22 tackles, 4 sacks, 7 quarterback hits, 3 tackles for loss. Not what anybody expected from him, but he's getting it done. He looks like he's going to be in contention to finish the season top 3 at the defensive line position. So good on him. Happy to have him back. Glad that he has, an awesome story of recovery, and that the end is not over till you say it's over, really, when you put your mind to something. So love to see that for him. Brian Burns has been heating up. If you guys read my IDP snapshot rookie rusher review from last year, it's a 3-part series, and I highlighted a lot of the defensive linemen coming out in 2019 and how they performed in the NFL. Brian Burns was a guy I touched on in my second article as one of the guys who I thought could trend up this year. He did very well last year, playing minimal snaps, got home a lot, and he was injured. So it's good to see him. 13 tackles, 1 sack, 4 quarterback hits, 3.5 tackles for loss, and a forced fumble. Now, not world beater numbers, but the snaps are trending up, and the pass rush efficiency is trending up. This team, the Panthers, is getting a lot of pressure without blitzing a lot, which tells me that the combination of Derek Brown, and the rookie Yetur Gross-Matos is really working out. So Brian Burns hasn't had that big blow up game yet. So he's a guy that I told you guys to be buying up this summer in Dynasty, and I still think you can go get him right now, reasonably priced, if you just have the stones to make a move. So I would recommend doing that. I've got him on a lot of my Dynasty rosters. He was one of the cheaper options of the second year class, and I still think we have a lot of upside with him coming. Carrie Hyder trending up. Like I said, he's coming in. He's playing for Nick Bosa. He's on the leaderboard right now. He's a top 15 defensive lineman in IDP 1-2-3 scoring. 18 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 7 quarterback hits, 3.5 tackles for loss. I mean, there's the impact plays, quarterback hits. He's getting to the quarterback. 2.5 sacks, that's good. And 18 tackles, I mean, that's a solid floor. I mean, it's only a handful behind Aldon Smith. Kaiser White, this is a fun one. Defensive back, or linebacker, really, for the Los Angeles Chargers. Kaiser White, 30 tackles, 1 pass deflection, 2.5 tackles for loss, 1 quarterback hit, a forced fumble. This guy's probably been sitting on a lot of people's taxi squads and on waiver wires because he was supposed to be something special the last 2 seasons, didn't really do a lot. And now with Derwin James going out, with the linebacker situation, losing Drew Tranquill earlier in the season, who was a guy I forgot to mention on the injuries bit, but Drew Tranquill did go out week 1 with an ACL injury. He's done for the season. Kaiser White has stepped into this linebacking role and kind of taken it by the horns, playing 100% of snaps the last 3 weeks, putting up big numbers. I mean, 30 tackles, like I said, a pass deflection, 2 tackles for loss, quarterback hit. On Sleeper, he is DB eligible as well as linebacker eligible, which is awesome. That's the cheat code right there. And he's actually playing linebacker snaps. So you can play him in your D line spot or your defensive back spot, and you're going to be playing a linebacker. So that's a little boost for anybody's team. Another guy who has been doing that as well this year is Jeremy Chin, who is not on this trending up. He should be on this trending up. I'm bringing him up now. He's also trending up. He's been playing linebacker snaps at the defensive back spot, and he's been having a great rookie year too. Great closing speed. He's, rangy, and he plays with a mentality. He actually just tweeted something out yesterday about how when he was in high school and college playing ball, he would go into a game. Before the game, he would watch Honey Badger highlights and say he was like, I wanted to play like that. And it really shows in the way he plays. He's a very tenacious player. So love to see that. There's another little cheat code for you if you're on Sleeper to get some linebacker points in your defensive back spot. Miles Jack, 37 tackles, 1 sack, 2 pass deflections, 2 quarterback hits, and interception. He's really blowing people's socks off this season. However, like I mentioned earlier, he did hurt his ankle in week 4, so we'll have to see how that goes. But to start the season, he's been trending up massively. Patrick Queen, the rookie, he right now is the best rookie linebacker to own. 33 tackles, a sack, 4 tackles for a loss, and a forced fumble. Great stat line for a guy that's playing about 85% of the snaps. Josie Jewell out here finally coming through for people after a couple of years. 30 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 quarterback hits, a pass deflection, and a week-winning week. 32 points in week 4 and IDP 1-2-3 scoring, the number 1 linebacker on the week. So kudos to him. Antoine Winfield trending up, and this is the defensive back, DB1 right now from this class for IDP. 25 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 pass deflections, a forced fumble. I think he's had an interception as well. I just couldn't fit that on the screen here. I'm not looking at it right now. And then he had a couple other interceptions he's almost had. So he's pass rushing acumen and his playmaking acumen, along with the fact that he's got 25 tackles to boot as a defensive back. Sign me up. He is crushing right now. So if you happen to have him on your team, I'm happy for you. Taylor Rapp. I want to touch on Taylor Rapp shortly. To start the season, Taylor Rapp was not playing. He was not getting snaps. I saw something that came out from somebody at The Athletic that covers the Rams, said he was injured early in the season or early in the offseason during their training camp or whatever, and knee, ankle, something, and basically missed all of camp. No conditioning, no practice, nothing. So we get to week 1. This is kind of flying under the radar, and then all of a sudden this kid, Jordan Fuller, a 6th-round pick, is out here playing basically 100% snaps week 1. Taylor Rapp's nowhere to be seen. Week 2 comes around. Taylor Rapp, again, is a total ghost. Jordan Fuller's playing all these snaps. People are dropping Taylor Rapp in dynasty leagues. I saw it happen in multiple dynasty leagues. People just dropped him, gave up on him, said bye. Week 3 comes around. Jordan Fuller, shoulder. He's out of the game early. Taylor Rapp comes in. Guy plays almost 100% of snaps. Week 4, Fuller, still out, shoulder hurts. Taylor Rapp, 100% of snaps. Somewhere along the line, the narrative came around that this was Jordan Fuller's job and Taylor Rapp had to win it back. I've heard it. I heard it a couple of spots. I don't really know where it began. I just think somebody just pulled out of thin air, honestly. Taylor Rapp was taken as a top 65 pick 2 years ago in the draft. 2nd-round pick, 61 overall, I believe. Jordan Fuller, love him, was almost an afterthought this year in the 6th round. I'll pick 200, 199 or 200. This was never Taylor Rapp's job to win back. This was always Jordan Fuller's job until Taylor Rapp was healthy. Now Fuller is not healthy, and now Rapp is healthy. He's got his job back. He's taken his job back. His role back was always his role. He is in game shape. He is back where he belongs. Jordan Fuller, is not going to take, when Jordan Fuller's healthy, he's not just going to take this job back over. That's not how this works. This was always Taylor Rapp's job. I picked up Taylor Rapp in 2 deep dynasties. We're starting 4 defensive backs because people just dropped him. You don't be that person, guys. Do a little more research, be a little more patient, do a little more due diligence, because Taylor Rapp's a guy that I happily this offseason would have given a 3rd-round pick for. I got him for free because people just decided that he had lost his job. But maybe that's on me. I should have got this information out there a little sooner, but go check your waiver wires for Taylor Rapp. Since missing the first week and almost the whole second week, and coming back in, he's got 22 tackles. I mean, he's a tackle monster. He had 100 tackles last year. He didn't play all 16 necessarily last year or start all 16 last year. He's in contention to get 100 tackles again this season. And think about that. People dropped him to the waivers after weeks 1 and week 2. Go snatch him up if he's available in your leagues. That's my advice for you. Nasir Adderley, he was another guy, came in last year as a rookie, did not perform, but again, with all the injuries to the Chargers, Nasir Adderley has been on the field the last 2 or 3 weeks, is 100% of snaps, not doing anything super dynamic yet, but he's on the field. He's going to be a more consistent option than maybe some of your lower end streaming corners or just, some other random guys. He's going to be a good play every week because he's going to get the snaps and he's got a role that you like, which is a safety role. So I got my notes here. Hyder is a plug and play the rest of the way. Kaiser White, pickup of the season, pickup of the year right now. He's probably on waiver wires because managers were getting just a little burnt out on him. And then Winfield is IDP elite. He's in a great system. He's in a great spot to perform. And I don't see him doing anything but that the rest of the way. So Now we're going to jump into some of the guys that are not trending the right way. They're struggling to start the season. Talk about the guys on the list. There's a handful of other guys I'm going to bring up as well that were not on this list just to get some thoughts. Before we do that, though, another guy that's trending up, I forgot to put him in there. He was also in my rookie rusher review. He was in the part 3, I believe, in part 2 or part 3. Chase Winovich played a lot of special teams last year, still managed 5 sacks, still managed a touchdown, forced fumble, just some crazy numbers on like 200 snaps. Now he is one of the only full-time players, full-time for defensive line for the Patriots, playing 75-ish% of snaps, a little bit more. He's getting home. Nothing gaudy yet, but he did sack Patrick Mahomes, which is not an easy task. He's one of the least sacked quarterbacks in the league right now. He got a lot of pressure on Russell Wilson, which Russell Wilson has been sacked a good bit this year, but he's in there. If there's a play happening for the Patriots defensively, Winovich is there. And that's what you want to see. His floor has been pretty high. He's been put up between like 11 and 18 points in IDP 1, 2, 3. You're not sinking your team. He's not blowing anybody out of the water. But if he keeps up consistent numbers like that, he's going to finish the season as a top 12 guy. And we haven't seen him pop yet. So Chase Winovich, pop games are coming, playing lights out. A little bit of an older prospect, 25 years old, but good to see that. He's trending up. I didn't have him on my graphic there, but I wanted to let you guys know about that. So let's go ahead and talk about the trending down players. Ruh-roh. All right, I'm just going to – he's not the top of the list, but I'll start with – don't want to bury the lead. DeMarcus Lawrence, yet again, here we are. It's week 4 of the season, 11 tackles, 1 tackle for loss of pass deflection. This guy is not getting it done for IDP. He has not got it done for IDP the last year. It was reflected a little bit in his draft capital coming into the season. He was usually, in the league drafts I was in, taken around between defensive linemen 15 and 25. But usually, around the 2020 area, people were taking him. He's letting you down big time. I mean, I don't even think he finished top 30 last season. People, he's injured. Yeah, he's old. I mean, his knee's injured. He's always injured. But I mean, week 1 and 2, he wasn't necessarily injured, and he just didn't do anything. I mean, this is just the story of DeMarcus Lawrence. He's kind of turning into kind of like that Jadeveon Clowney situation where, he's got the big name. He's had some big games in the past, and that's what people want to hold on to. But again, he's being outproduced second year in a row by another player on his team at the same position, doing all the work, getting all the stats. DeMarcus Lawrence getting all the money. Aldon Smith right now is a top 3 guy, 4 sacks, 1 behind the league leader, playmaker, playing 80-something% of snaps. DeMarcus Lawrence can barely get on the field. He's playing like 30% of snaps, 40% of snaps. And, I get that he's injured, but, I mean, this is just not good. This is not a good situation to be in. My suggestion to anybody that has him is to trade DeMarcus Lawrence. Somebody was asking me in the Fantasy Football Discord channel. Shout out the guys over there, guys and gals over there. Great spot to hang out. Good stuff over there put on by Space Ghost. But they were asking me yesterday, what do I do with DeMarcus Lawrence? And this one guy's like, do I drop him? And I was like, I mean, the answer to that is he's droppable, in my opinion. Do you drop him? No. I'm still going to try to use that name to send a trade for a player, for a 1-for-1 or a 2-for-2. And, maybe it's a little bit in your favor. And the owner sends something back. That's not quite there yet. Throwing DeMarcus Lawrence is the very first thing you add to every trade from now on when somebody says that's not quite it. If you have DeMarcus Lawrence, that's how you unload him. You make that one deal go through that, and again, it's going to be a tough sell. You're going to have a Cowboys fan. You're going to have somebody that had DeMarcus Lawrence a couple of years ago, or somebody that's at need at defensive line, somebody that has lost Nick Bosa, that has lost Matt Ioannidis, that, is a little shook because Chris Jones sat out this last week. That's the owner you're going to want to talk to, the manager you're going to want to speak to, and that's how you're going to get that trade done. Don't put DeMarcus Lawrence on the block. That's a great way to not have him ever get taken from you. Don't send a 1-for-1 trade for DeMarcus Lawrence and a pick. Nobody wants to give up a pick for DeMarcus Lawrence, even a bad pick. Because, we're in the season right now. It's week 4. The picks every week, the pick value and pick equity is going up. People are, they're already thinking about next year, especially teams that aren't doing well. You have to be smart about this. To get this sale to close, you have to, give them a feint, some smoke and mirrors. Go in looking for a certain player. Put a player in that's pretty close but not quite there. And then every time you do that, every trade from now on, DeMarcus Lawrence is the first piece you add. Try to get rid of him. That's my advice. Isaiah Simmons, this is not good. He was the first IDP taken in a lot of rookie drafts this last year. It was him or Chase Young or Patrick Queen in some spots. And Isaiah Simmons has 6 tackles, guys, and is playing almost no snaps. This team doesn't necessarily need him. Devondre Campbell and Jordan Hicks are both playing well. Budda Baker's playing well. But another thing is just he's playing bad. When he was on the field week 1, they tried to make it work. He couldn't do anything. He was getting beat left and right, a liability, and they pulled him out. And since then, he's had trouble getting back on the field. Some draft analysts, I'm sorry I can't give him a shout out because I don't know his exact handle or name, but somebody in the draft community said something, and they wrote something that they pulled up something they wrote, a few months back, and said Isaiah Simmons as a project linebacker. And he was basically said there is no such thing as a project linebacker. Like, you either know the position or you don't. And he said, and safety, he said you either know the position or you don't. And he said that's something that he knocked Isaiah Simmons for, not gave him accolades for coming into the draft, was we don't know truly what he is or where he is best suited to play on the field because he does so much. So something that a lot of us looked at as a positive for him, some people did view as a negative, and it's looking like they're having trouble figuring out what to do with him as well. We heard that maybe he would play some safety snaps this last week with Budda Baker missing the week with the thumb injury or surgery. Didn't come to fruition. So Isaiah Simmons right now is a hold in Dynasty. But if somebody comes sniffing around, he's a pretty easy sell to me, especially considering that you gave a late first or a second for Isaiah Simmons, and so far he's done nothing for you. I'm trying to recoup anything at this point. Don't undersell him. Don't drop him, especially, this is Dynasty Nerds. We're talking Dynasty focused here. Don't drop him. That's the last thing you want to do. But it's a hold and pray. Thoughts and prayers with all the Isaiah Simmons managers. Sion Taki, he's kind of came in, put up some stats to start the season, 23 tackles, a quarterback hit, half a sack, but he did not play very well in I believe it was week 2 or week 3. The Browns were on primetime. He just did not perform well. Mac Wilson has been out. That's basically why Taki has been getting more playing time. BJ Goodson's been playing fairly well for them. Mac Wilson came off the IR. I should have probably touched on that on the injury segment earlier, but Mac Wilson has come off the IR. Last 2 weeks is not playing a lot. They're probably easing him back into play time, I'd imagine, though. I think we'll see a pretty good uptick this week for Mac Wilson, which is, kind of part of why I'm projecting Taki as a trending down. He's also just not been playing a lot of snaps, and his play has not been great. Does he have some stats to go with him? Yeah. Has he sunk your team? No. I've played him several times this past, through the start of the season. He is what he is. He's a linebacker 3 or a linebacker 4 for your team. There was hope that maybe he could, be a linebacker 2. Didn't come to fruition. He didn't tank your team. If you were playing him thinking he was a 1 or a 2, that's on you. So, Taki, though, trending down right now. Definitely be monitoring those snaps and the situation there going forward. He is still getting play, and they put him in on third downs. I've seen several times in a goal line situation. So they trust him. It's just I don't know if he's really solidified what his role is. I don't know if those coaches have solidified what his role is. So as of right now, with Mac Wilson coming off IR and Goodson playing well, he's a trending down player for me. Robert Quinn, this one really hurts, guys. Robert Quinn and Dante Fowler, 2 guys coming into the season I had very high hopes for. Both DL and linebacker eligible on Sleeper. I believe they're both DE eligible on MFL right now. So they're being played in the appropriate spots to be useful for your team, but both have nagging ankle injuries. And it's really been affecting Robert Quinn's snaps. He's barely been able to get on the field so far this season. 2 tackles, a tackle for loss, a sack, quarterback hit, and a forced fumble. Dante Fowler has been on the field, but he's just not been getting home. I feel like I see him in on a lot of plays that the Falcons have had this season, a lot of disruptive looking plays. But when, it all gets broken up and, ESPN or Sleeper updates the box score, the stats are not going to Dante Fowler. They're going to other guys, Grady Jarrett in particular, a lot this season. But 8 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 3 quarterback hits, 3.5 tackles for loss. You still like that? I mean, he's not completely tanking your season, but 8 tackles. You need more than that. So big disappointment to start the year. Like I said, both these guys have nagging ankle injuries, though. So you have to kind of put that on them. But that's on them. So I know I drafted Dante Fowler this year in a lot of spots as my 1 kind of in that 15-16 area, a little bit before DeMarcus Lawrence a lot of times. And he's not coming through for me. I blame that on the injury right now. And then Robert Quinn, same thing. So you have to adjust your expectations. You're playing with fire when you put these guys in your lineup right now. You might be in a position where that's all you can do, though. And a couple points is better than no points. So, and then Tahir Whitehead, last guy I want to kind of touch on this graphic on YouTube. Again, subscribe, guys. 23 tackles, a fumble recovery. His snaps have gone down every week since the season has really started. It's a bummer. He was in a situation, where we thought maybe he could take over a productive role there in Carolina, and it just has not come to fruition. 90% of snaps the first week, 72 week 2, 64, and then 53. So they're just going down, down, down. Jeremy Chinn's usage and emergence is just going up, up, up. So that's unfortunate, but that's just the reality of the world that we live in right now. Last player I want to mention, kind of trending down, but you probably should know this. Ronnie Harrison was traded to the Browns to kind of start the season. From the Jacksonville Jaguars, he has not been able to get on the field. Anthony Sendejo has been, and Carl Joseph has kind of been owning that spot there. So he was a safety that was useful last year, had some upside coming into the season, but can't get on the field right now. Trending up player, I forgot to mention, Josh Jones, who took over his role with the Jacksonville Jaguars, is a safety who is doing very well to start the season. So Josh Jones, he may still be on some of your waivers as well. Formerly with the Packers, not a big name, never had a really big season, but he's on a team that is meh right now. Their defense is getting a lot of tackles. Miles Jack, if he's banged up this week, could be a good spot for Josh Jones to really produce, but he already has had some really good games start the season. So don't doubt Josh Jones, another player that has been trending up. Getting towards the end of the show, couple other players I want to talk about in the trending down section. Chandler Jones leading the NFL defensive line players in snaps. Has no sacks yet this season, guys. I mean, it's bad for Chandler Jones. 10 tackles. Oh, he does have a sack, it says. When did he have a sack? Oh, I guess he had a sack week 1. Okay. Ooh, I thought he had no sacks in the season for whatever reason. Still not great. 13 points, 7 points, 6 points, 6 points the last 3 weeks. 10 tackles, 1 sack, 1 fumble recovery, leading the defensive line players in the NFL in snaps. People say snaps are all that matters. All I want is a player that plays a lot of snaps, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't look like himself out there to me. He looks like he's putting about 90% effort into his plays. And when he's trying to get to the quarterback, from what I've been watching, he looks like he's taking the longest route to get to the quarterback I've ever seen. Like nothing's inside, everything's out, and it's always wide. I mean, I'm not a film guru or expert, but when I'm watching him play, and I've been paying attention because I've got him in a lot of leagues where I've been counting on him, he's been letting me down. He just looks like he's taking the longest path he can take to get to the quarterback, and it does not look like it looks like he's giving up on plays sooner than he should, to me. So maybe that's why the snaps are not, the production's not there, even though the snaps are. Another player that is trending, not down necessarily, but his owners might be down on, is Cam Jordan. He only has 1 sack to start the season as well. You have to remember, both these guys were sack leaders last year in 2019. So their managers they're hurting right now. They came into the season expecting the season to go a certain way, myself included, and it is not come to fruition through the first quarter of the season. At this point, it's going to be a lot of work for either of them to get to the 10 sack mark. Not saying it can't happen. It can. These are, dynamic playmakers, both of them, but this might be a buy low opportunity if you want to take that risk. I know as a frustrated Chandler Jones manager, I would definitely be willing to field offers from somebody who's maybe looking to add a little boost and, is on a four game win streak, something like that. So, yeah. Well, Nerd Herd and IDP Army, if you all join me, that's pretty much going to wrap up this first installment of In My Defense. I appreciate you guys coming on, joining me. I appreciate the Dynasty Nerds for putting this on. It's going to be fun. We're going to do a lot more in-depth stuff as the season goes on, and off season we'll, have some guests on. We'll examine, the dynasty rankings on Dynasty Nerds. We'll take a look at the consensus. We'll talk about some disparities maybe. We'll talk about some guys that are going up and down in our rankings, some why we're kind of viewing players certain ways. We might feature some of the articles that are written on site, have some of those authors come on, do some interviews, things of that nature. And yeah, I mean, this is just going to be a really fun show. Hopefully, going to be really informative, entertaining sometimes. I try to be funny. My humor's kind of dry. Um, you guys might catch me on a day where I'm, feeling myself a little more. Maybe I'll get you a little giggle in there. But appreciate you for joining me. Please leave any comments, questions on your dynasty teams. I would love to have a questions and answers segment at the end of the next show, which would be awesome to do. And again, always subscribe, share with any of your league mates, any of your friends that want to get into IDP fantasy football. Check out me on Twitter at 50 Shades of Drunk, and then check out the Defense Matters podcast, which I host. That's a weekly show that goes over IDP fantasy football rankings and then news and updates kind of from later in the week. And then check out, of course, the IDP 123 article, which is pinned to my profile. And as always, go subscribe to the Dynasty Nerds website, join the Nerd Herd, and get Dynasty GM, and really take your Dynasty game up to the next level. So, guys, from me, Jordan Rains at 50 Shades of Drunk, from the Nerd Herd, from all the guys over here at Dynasty Nerds, thank you, YouTube community. I appreciate you. And until next time, go win some leagues, go win some weeks, have some fun.